Wow, what an amazing day. I think we'll all agree it's been some pretty amazing racing. Amazing seeing all of our special bikes, all our special guests. It's really made this been a world-class event today, and I don't think you'll find a better event maybe anywhere in the world. I'm a bit biased, but yeah, it's been an amazing day. So big thanks to all of our guests and all the guys that brought the bikes over as well from Aussie and all, and Mike and everybody else. Give them a hand, please. I've got to meet a few of my heroes today, and to be honest, I was standing there talking to a couple of them. I won't name them, but yeah, it was a bit of a man-love moment. So yeah, amazing day, and I think we've all enjoyed it. So tonight we've got a great presentation. Paul has put together a presentation to celebrate Mike's book. Mike's had an amazing career, and we'll hear from some of the people involved in the book and a bit more about the book. And I hope you'll enjoy it. It should be pretty special. So yeah, enjoy the presentation, and I'll pass you over to Paul.
Hey. Thanks, Dave. What a fantastic event, and can we all quite believe it from Timaru? And fantastic, what the weather turned on for us today, and the quality of people that we've got here today. Spectators, riders, organisers, partners, it's just fantastic. And listen, I'd like to firstly introduce the amazing lineup that we've been able to assemble. Firstly, Pat Hennen. Pat, thank you very much and your friends for coming out from the US to support us. We all have very fond memories of the Mamola series, and you're definitely a friend of the Kiwis. Thanks, Pat. And of course, what an amazing lineup we've got here on the screen in front of us. Kevin Magee, Grand Prix rider, Grand Prix winner, riding the YZR. I mean, that's very special, and that's a very special bike. And thanks to Tom and Stu for arranging all of that. Very cool. Jeremy Burgess, JB, fantastic that JB made the effort to come over from Adelaide. I think I just harassed him to death actually, and then he finally gave in. And of course Dick Smart as well. Dickie, who's actually a Timaru boy, would you believe it? And spent I think 14 years doing Grand Prix with Mick and Valentina. So that's quite a career. Then of course Robbie. Fantastic, as always, to have you in New Zealand. Between yourself and Slighty, we're going to be entertained later on by those two boys, so it's absolutely hilarious. We'll wind those guys up. Of course, our own Graeme Crosby. Where we go, He spent most of his life at the bar. But great to have Cros here. Of course we know him, but here we have another Isle of Man TT winner. I mean, very cool, another Kiwi. Of course, Hugh Anderson, multiple world champion, Isle of Man winner. I mean, wasn't that fantastic to see Huey out there on that car, on Greg's car 250? Aaron Slight, what a fantastic Kiwi superbike legend. My God, I don't know how he didn't win a world championship. He absolutely should have won a championship. You could have done if you'd taken the guy out on the last lap. But great to have Aaron here as well, and some special bikes that he was riding. Thank you very much, Aaron, for coming along. Stewie Yvonne, boy from Christchurch. Isn't it fantastic? He was such a rock star in his day. He really was. And in our view, he still is. Great Stewie, and Stu's actually the reason that Mike and I are back involved in these bikes. Tom and Stu got together and decided to make some investment in some lovely old machinery, and they persuaded Mike, and Mike persuaded me, and it's been downhill ever since. But thank you, Stewie, and Stewie's going to say some words. Richard Scotty, fantastic to have Scotty here. You know, even though he rode his Harley all the way down from Tauranga with the rest of the boys, but scraping those bloody foot, runners all the way. But Scotty, particularly, I have a very soft spot for Scotty because, as he will tell you, I'm the reason. He is the reason I got into Grand Prix because he was. We had, I don't know if you guys remember, we bought the RS 500 triple out here 2 years in a row, and Scotty rode that, and then we rode the European Championship. He won a really good race in Donington. We went to the ref, rode the RS down there. We finished, I think, 10th, I think it was, and then he ended up in Team Roberts. And I'll ask him to enlighten you on how he went there, but I know it cost a lot of money. John Booth, absolute local legend, Christchurch boy again, who's been involved in our excursions in recent years. Great to have John here. Hopefully the TZ will behave tomorrow and we'll see him riding around in absolute, and back to his old form. And Gary Middleton, thank you very much. It's Gary's bikes that John's riding and the KR's riding. And of course Mike Hero, thanks Mike, fantastic. Firstly because Mike was a 250, 350 New Zealand champion, and he's come back into the sport again, which is just fantastic. And thank you very much Mike for your support, and boy wasn't it so cool to see Mike on that YZR today. Now, I'll just run through a few bits and bobs here. I mean, we're here actually because of Mike Sinclair's book and the story of his life. So we're going to run through a story of Mike's life and many of the people that have been touched by Mike.
He never touched me.
It's only early, Stu, it's only early. But also just be aware, we're just put housekeeping, and clearly if we need to exit, we're going to go that way quickly. I just also, Mike Gurr, the mega supporter. So I just want to have Mike just say a couple of words. And I did line him up earlier on, so he does know what's coming. Because I think this is actually about Mike Sinclair, really, but fantastic to have Mike Perro's support.
Thanks, Paul. I'm not going to pretend I can remember all the names who have been part of this weekend, but Dave, Sue, Stewie, Tom, Paul, and there's probably about 40 or 50 other people that have been involved. I'm just another rider, I'm a local rider. I'm humbled by the fact that I was put on the list because I did notice I was at the bottom. But that's where I should be, because I was the only one that didn't go overseas. I just stayed around because everyone had buggered off. I could win some championships. So, look, I'm honoured to be amongst the presence of these guys, these riders, who I looked up to, and they inspired me in my motorsport. And I just love motorcycles. I had a dabble in cars, no good at cars, but it's great to be back here, and I love the YZR. Yeah, that was an awesome experience, and thank you so much for that. But I'm just hoping that tomorrow will be just as much fun as the last 2 days have been, and thank you all for coming, and we'll be doing it again very shortly.
Thanks, Mike. Moving right along. I'd like to introduce Kerry Swanson, who's the author of Mike's book. Kerry, a few words.
Perhaps I'll just give you a bit of an idea how I got to write Mike's biography. About 4 years ago, I write regularly for Bike Rider magazine, and I'm one of these people who spectated at the Mamola series. And it seemed to me that it was an event that hadn't got a lot of publicity, and so I talked to the editor of Bike Rider and said what I wanted to do was profile individuals from Christchurch who had contributed so much to the Mamola series. So as a sponsor, I chose Tommy McCleary, as a rider, John Boot, as a mechanic, Mike, and then as an administrator was Ray Sherman, who unfortunately now has passed on, and I spent a lot of time with Ray, and he was a wonderful, wonderful man. And then the third person was Ewan Cameron. So having written those articles, I then suddenly got to know more about Mike, and as a result of talking about the Mamola series, it became apparent to me that there was actually much more to Mike than just the Mamola series. And so I suggested to Mike that it might be a good idea that his history was written up. And initially Mike was quite reluctant, I have to say. And so some pressure was applied, and he then agreed. And Bill Honeybone from Bateman, I went to a book release over in Governor's Bay, and Bill asked me what I was up to, and I told him that I was starting to work on Mike's biography, and Bill came down a month later, which was the beginning of December, and so Mike and I went and had a coffee with Bill, and the objective was to have the text back to the publisher in May. So we had 6 months to write, to complete it. For me, going to Mike's place up to 2 or 3 times a week and spending 4 hours just chatting to him was something I will never, ever, ever forget, actually. For me, it was just a life-changing experience just for this man to tell me what he'd been up to. The thing that I really wanted to do in terms of the book was that if you read the book, it's a view, I say, from the shed. And what I want you to do is to read it, and you will read it in a way that you realise it's Mike talking to you, not me writing to you. And if you, when you finish and close it, that's the way you feel about it, then I think I've been successful. It's a wonderful story, and I'm just so happy that Mike gave me the privilege to write the book. Thank you.
So we'll move on to some of Mike's early years from Christchurch, and there was a hell of a crew of guys from Christchurch. And Mike was saying today, they used to come down here testing. They'd pay $20 for all day testing at Timaru, and he was fairly focused on that fast left down the end there, and be able to just pitch it in that fast left and just be scrubbing speed all the way to the outside of the corner. Fantastic days, and clearly we've got quite a bit of incriminating evidence up here, so I want to just move along, and Stu's going to take the floor in a second, but before you do that, Stu, I just want to, I've just got a video here that we received from Tommy McCleary, and Tommy was a motorcycle dealer and sponsor in Christchurch. Unfortunately, Tommy's got a few years under the belt now, got a few miles on, and he wasn't able to attend tonight, but he sent this lovely video to Mike.
Hello, Mike. I just wanted to say what a very great pleasure it has been to have known you for so many years. When we first met and you decided to join our team at the motorcycle business, I had no idea that behind that pleasant smiling face was a brain that was as active as yours has obviously been. And it's been a great pleasure to have known you for so long and watched your happenings all of these years. Mike, after having read Kerry's and your book, I feel that I know much more about you now than I ever did before, and knowing now what I do, I feel really honoured to have been part of your life. To me, it's an achievement which has been attained by not many people, and yours is, in my thoughts, yours is the greatest of them all. And Mike, I wish you all the best for the future. Congratulate you on the achievements that you've already done, and hope everything goes very, very well for you.
Right, Stewie. And I did try and get Mike's wife Maz here, of course, but she's really seen enough motorbikes in all her life and hasn't seen much of Mike. Long suffering, and of course Stu giving the appropriate reference to the Australians by drawing Australia upside down there. So I'll pass the over to Stu.
Thanks very much, and firstly, thanks for inviting us here. I'll quickly say, this is a bit off the track, Dave Reesby sent me a message saying, would you like to ride at Timaru? And seeing his body, as you can see, that doesn't ride anymore. I just can't work it out. I drink a lot, eat a lot, and don't exercise, and I keep putting weight on. That's really getting me down. But I said, we've got some bikes with my great friend Tommy. We brought some bikes together, and I rang Gary and I said, would you come home with me and run these bikes? And they went, oh yeah, of course, no problems. And I rang Cros. I said, Cros, I'm sorry there's no money in it, but we love you. This is New Zealand. would you come down? And he said yes. And with Magee, you just have to work out. It's a long story with Magee. Like, I bought his ticket and I got a message saying can't make it. And I said, you're dreaming. He said, no, I can't make it. So I rang him and he said, well, I can't make it that day. I can make it the next day. So he's my neighbour and we spent a lot of time together. And we were sitting around talking. We've all got a relationship, and it all started about the same time, you know, way back in 76, I guess, or it's been 40 years since Michael and I went to Italy together, but it started before that because we worked for Tommy. You saw Tommy then. Tommy, you had to work at Tommy McCleary Suzuki, I won't say Yamaha because it's swearing, and those were the days with the Colemans and with everyone else. Got a couple of notes just so I don't make a mistake, but I'll make mistakes, I'm sorry, but not so many. And as a young fellow working there, you've got to understand that Tommy brought in speedway riders like Ode Funden, Tommy Knudsen, Brigo was there, Ronnie Moore, all those sort of people. Gaston Rea, which was World 125 champions, I think your dad brought in. And Mick Andrews on motocross when they had that wide machine when he changed to Yamaha. Jungle was there. There were all sorts of people, and he's not here today, all sorts of people hanging around our motorcycle shop. And I was the clown. I was the one that Tommy always took the piss out of. I was the guy that walked through with jugs of oil and fell over and spilt them and they had to get the floor done. I was the guy that crashed his cars. I was the guy that was always in the crap. And Michael was the sensible one, and he still is. But for whatever reason, he would be working on bikes and I'd be trying to ride, and we spent a lot of time together. I was in charge of holding things while he welded them. And it took me a long time to realise why, if you've got an iPhone and you try and put your fingers on to put your print on, I ain't got one. I could print that off in 74. So we worked together, and I don't even think we thought about our families too much. We were just mates. And we had the same route home. So we'd take the same way home every night. And he had I always recall some funny stories with him. He had a Suzuki 80 sidecar that we used to deliver spare parts in. And I had my gaucho, but Sinclair had the speed on me. It really had the speed on me, so he went round a right-hander and the sidecar broke off. And lost himself through the hedge, and I've got to say that he wouldn't have been racing and doing what he did later on if he'd hurt himself. But you know, they were good days. We travelled together. You could never get Michael out of bed. I can remember we went to Picton once, and we had to pick him up in his sleeping bag and put him in our J2 Morris because he couldn't wake up. I don't know if it's the same, but he was just bloody hopeless. And, you know, also McLean's are famous. I broke his family up because they were going fairly well until I came on the scene. And his dad and his brothers and everything else. And we had I had a TS 185 that you could easily go down Burwood Ave and between the lights do wheelies, first, second, third, fourth, down, first, second, third, fourth. I come flying down his road, put the brakes on, turn into his house, and I hear I look over my shoulder and there's a copper on a T20 Suzuki with the back brake locks who'd been chasing me for about half an hour. So he came in, and Michael's father wasn't very impressed with me. So the boys decided to fight, and they fought about the fact that I was allowed to do wheelies and go up the drive, and Jim fought about the fact that it was his effing house, and everyone moved out, so I just wrecked the family, and the copper took the keys home and put them in my letter box at home and said, walk home. So different days. And in any case, we sort of, he was always the brains and I was the brawn, and we went separate ways and we raced, and I remember Pat and me and Booty, we loaded up our bikes to go to Laverton. I've got a picture of us all looking brand new, Pat. We're not quite as brand new now, but we were then. And we went over to race at Laverton, and we had a pretty good run and did well. And out of the woodwork comes Michael. I said, what are you doing? I said, I'm knocking down houses. Maz doesn't love me anymore, or not at the moment. I said, oh, okay, that works. Catch you later. And I went home and I got a telegram on a blue paper, telex in those days. Said, we have DME, please come to Italy. So I rang Michael. Well, actually, I didn't ring him because you couldn't do this shit. I don't know how I found you. Homing kitchen. I said something else. And we said, let's go to Europe. We may as well. So Michael came home and his dad made a box, which he's got in the pit stall because he hauled things. And he put every tool in there that you could carry to look after an RG500 because we had a really nice bike. And the Colemans and Tommy had helped me out with a really good bike, and we said, we're going to go to Europe, we're going to be champions. And we actually flew on in those days it was $1,100 to Europe return, which is crazy because the average wage was $15,000. And we cheated and we got to Singapore and we refused to get back on the plane because we knew it was going via Rome unless we could get off in Rome. And we knew from Dale Wiley that if you pushed people hard enough, as long as they didn't have guns, you would probably get on the flight. We ended up arriving and he had a typical Michael had a phrase book, and it was snowing and I had a t-shirt on and I said, it's cold. It wasn't cold in Christchurch. And he kind of looked at me and said, you're a bloody dope, and he wasn't far off the mark. Michael decided to work all hours on a dyno because he had a water brake dyno. How exciting. Oh, you've got to have that, don't you? Like bullshit. And I'm trying to chase skirt, but no one will talk to me. And they're locking up their daughters at 7 o'clock at night. It just didn't seem right. So I found that you could buy a few stick books, or you could trade with the truck drivers and get a war magazine. I learned to speak German out of my magazines, but the Germans always won for some reason. And we stayed in a hotel that. No cold. Well, actually, we stayed in a really nice hotel for a while until they realised we had no money. And then we got downgraded to one without hot or cold water. And Michael went to work all day, and I lay in the room, look at the ceiling. Probably had a wank here or there. I don't know. But you know, life went on, and we went to our first race, and Michael had made special exhaust pipes on the dyno, and. They were good. If the straight was 4.9 kilometres long, I would probably be at the lead at the end of it. And we had a really eventful year. And of course, Pat was there, and we knew Pat and his brother and the guys, and we sort of hung around together. We did well, and Michael gave me a really good bike, and we went fairly well. And we went to Magello, and it was the first time they'd ever run the circuit. And we had two teammates. A guy called Paolo Tordi and another guy, Bush Guarini, who would have been world champion, I think. And Michael had built him a 350 Yamaha that could actually runs better than your ones, Paul. Just joking. I've been watching all day. And it was really, really fast. And I think he might have been leading the world championship or near enough. And as luck would have it, both of them got killed. One on Friday and one on Saturday. And I actually put my bike into the fence. Michael went off and cast up new parts and repaired the thing. But it was sort of downhill from there because they didn't want to go to any race meetings. And once again, we looked at each other during that long lunch and said, how did we survive? And Michael said, what do we do for money? I said, I didn't think we had it. And I had the misfortune or good fortune of teaming up with Phil Reid. I used the wrong word accidentally there. And I decided that I was fairly useful in the social scene. We went to Brands Hatch and I got £695 to turn up, and Phil said, let's go to Tramp's nightclub in London, and it's your 21st birthday, and Noddy Holder was there and Mick Jagger, and they sung me happy birthday, and I was the dog's bollocks. And I turned around, and if anyone knows Phil Reid, particularly Jeffrey, Phil was gone. And I had the bill, and the bill was about £8 more than my prize money. But it didn't stop me from believing my own bullshit. And we eventually ended up back in New Zealand. We had a Nico back at Chassis. And Michael sort of looked at me one day and said, and very wisely on my dad, this is all too hard. There's a guy called Pat Hennen that's knocking on my door, and he's serious. And Pat, apart from putting ketchup on all his bloody food, was, like, who he wanted to be. He was serious, he was fast. His brother mentioned the other day that he was the first guy to win a Grand Prix, American to win a Grand Prix, and I put a little caption for Chipper that, yes, I was there, I remember it. I got a little injured because someone put new brake pads on my bike and almost hurt me, and I actually hurt a few people. But anyway, I was off on a tangent. I wasn't as good as Michael, and the best thing he could do was, I guess he was a snake that got rid of the old skin, and I was the old skin. And now we're back together as mates and mucking around with his bikes. It's really good. But I like to think that by, organically I launched him and he launched me, and we've become and became and are still really great friends, and I'm honoured to be here. And the only thing I should say, we were signing books today, and there's a guy opposite him that kept signing them as well, and I thought, Sinclair, what a wanker. He got someone writing his name in it. It was actually Kerry. I said, no, that's not you, is it? And we've had a really good time. We love it. We're still friends. How cool is this? 45 years later, we're still mates. You can't beat it. And coming back here with all the K1W1s, I'm probably more Australian than I should be. But it's really neat to be back here, and I really appreciate my family coming, and I really appreciate all the boys that turned up. It's been a great day, and I think I've spoken too much. So I'll put you back to Paul. Thanks, guys.
He's a bloody legend, isn't he? And listen, I just wanted to continue the story a little bit about with Mike, and Mike and Pat, and of course France. He was a great American mechanic who was around helping Pat before Mike came along. And Franz has sent us a kind note, Mike. So here you go, a message from Franz.
Good day, Michael. Kia ora from Southern California. Or as we like to say over here, what's happening, dude? Michael, I heard about your event, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I only heard about it 2 months ago, and otherwise I would have been there. There just wasn't enough time to plan. So, this video will have to do. First, Michael, I want you to know that the 2 years that I spent with you in 1977 and 78 with Pat was one of the greatest adventures of my life. You'd already spent the prior year with Stu Avant, and I was Pat's mechanic on his first year. So we'd already spent a little bit of time there, but when Pat got his factory ride in 1977, he recruited you to join the team. And when you came, I thought, just exactly who is this Sinclair fella? And what does he know that we don't already know? Well, I found out pretty quickly. As soon as the factory bikes arrived in 1977, you unpacked one and you serviced it and then started it up. And I was watching you work the throttle. You were whacking the throttle open, checking off idle response. And I was watching you very carefully to try to figure out what is it that he's looking for. And then you shut the bike off and you said, we have to file off 1/16 inch off the throttle slide cutaways on every carburetor. And I realized at that point that I was now the third best mechanic on the team, behind you and Pat. And it was time to go back to being a student And Mike, I learned a great deal from you in the 2 years we were together. Your approach to technical problems, unusual, but out of the box, but oftentimes so very logical. Case in point, I remember one time we had a race coming up at Scarborough in England, and we realized the 500 would get around the track faster than the 650. Problem is, the organizers wouldn't allow the 500 in the open race. They wanted motorcycles over 501. So you took one of the 4 cylinders, and the night before the race you bored it over 2 millimeters, and that 125cc cylinder then became a 133. So we had 3 cylinders at 125, one at 133, we had a 508, which of course upset my sense of balance and order and discipline. And I asked you, are you sure this is going to work? And you said, why not? The engine doesn't care. And you know what? Pat won that race the next day. That was yet another lesson learned. And Mike, I want you to know that you were, other than a technical teacher, you were also a role model in many other different ways. Your work ethic, for one thing. Your commitment, your ingenuity, your curiosity, your determination to always prepare the motorcycle so that it would be safe for the rider. Mike, in other words, a solid, strong moral compass. Maz, you absolutely married the right guy. And while I have your amazing wife, Maz, I want to say, Maz, thank you for keeping our caravan tidy, for always making sure there was something to eat when we had to work late. Maz, who also did Mike's dirty laundry without complaint, and on occasion, mine. Maz, you know I love you, right? So here you are tonight, Mike, and what an amazing evening. Congratulations, what an amazing life. You certainly have a wonderful resume to look back on. Well done, mate. Well reserved. Again, congratulations, and Ayik Aro. That's Kia Ora backwards. It means good night.
That's pretty cool, right? I thought this was a great shot. This is clearly in Hennen at the factory. Brand new RGs, ready to go to Europe. Where was that? Oh, RYO, yes, sorry. Sorry again. Something, yeah, that's it. But listen, one guy I'd really like to introduce, we're very lucky to have along here, who worked with Michael in the early days at Hennen Suzuki. And when Rainey went to HRC, Michael also went along with the 3-cylinder. One of the guys that they met and they worked together was Jeremy Burgess. And you look at JB's lineup here, I actually had to go and Google this JB because JB was always in the bar early. We were the guys, Mike and I, we were upside down and YZRs and bloody crankshafts all over the bench and cylinders and everything, and we were still welding pipes. I was still holding on to brackets, and JB and Dickie, who's here, they'd wander past the garage door normally at about, I'll lie, but it was about 5:30. But it was probably about 8 o'clock. But the Honda guys got always out of there so early, saying, "What are you guys doing?" So you guys, all they do is to change main jets on a Honda and replace parts. That's all they do. So, but I'm sure JB, you've got a few comments about this. You should look at this lineup. Worked with Freddie, where they won the World Championship in 1985. Clearly was head engineer with Nick between 1986 and 1998. And then clearly with Valentino between 1999 and 2012. I don't know, but that's a lot of World Championships. JB, lovely to have you in New Zealand. And I think it's been about a million years since you've been to Timaru. But thank you very much. I absolutely harassed the hell out of JB to come here, and you and Vicky to come across. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Paul. It's a great pleasure to be here, Mike, to be here to sort of endorse this book that probably should have been written many years ago. I can't stand here and tell you any sordid stories about Mike Sinclair. But what I can tell you is that you learn a lot more by listening to Mike Sinclair than ever actually adding to the conversation. Probably the most pragmatic guy I've ever met. I can remember one situation where all hell had broken loose and riders were leaping up and down about the crash they'd had or whatever, and Mike and I were in the paddock at one time, and Mike said, I don't know what all the fuss is about. It's only a motorcycle race. There's another one next week. And this is something that I carried with me the entire time I was in Europe. After that day, I felt that, yes, you know, as serious as we believe it is only another motorcycle race. And Mike, I think like myself, you know, the intention was to assist young men in their goal to be the world champion or to seek the best that they could. And out of all of that, you know, there were years in the early 90s where Mike was public enemy number one as far as I was concerned. Him and Wayne Rainey gave me more sleepless nights than anybody I can ever remember in my life. I can remember Honda getting very heavy on me because they insisted it was their right to win the championship every second year, and we hadn't won it. And this was something that was totally foreign to Honda, who at every second year were quite happy to concede the championship, well not happy, but accepting of the championship being moved to Yamaha for a year, but as long as it came back to Honda in the following year. And after Eddie won it in 1989, Wayne Rainey came on board and essentially took it away from us for 3 years. And Mick Doohan was the young upstart, the guy they'd expected to take over from Wayne Gardner, and it wasn't really happening. And they had motorcycles that were missiles. They'd forgotten about the simple things of drivability off the corner. They'd go 200 miles an hour, close to 200 miles an hour at Hockenheim, but they'd forget about the rideability of the bike. And this is something that took some time, and I know Mike and the Yamaha, our riders were always complaining about how easy the ride on the Yamaha could open the throttle. And Mike knew, I believe, the complete package of what was required to get the best out of the bike. And the short time I spent with Mike in Suzuki in 1982 was a great year. I have fond memories of being with Mike in the Plaza de Mayo in Buenos Aires when the Falklands War broke out. Mike and I were walking around there, and there were hundreds of women walking around in a massive circle, and both of us being relatively knowledgeable on the politics of the world were able to deduce and understand that these were the women looking for their sons who'd been herded into the stadiums and then disappeared out of aeroplanes over the sea in South America at that time. Mike's political views of mine, I think, were at times very similar. I think Mike has a very good sense of social justice, and this is something that endeared me to Mike very much. Other than the times we were head to head, you know, and that's what competition's about. It brings out the best in everybody. But I'd like to compliment Mike on a wonderful career, and wish you all the best in the future.
Thanks, JB. Fantastic. Listen, I thought I'd just digress for a moment. In Cros, you were around in that era as well, and I don't believe you ever, I don't think Mike ever worked on your team at the time, but was he in the Suzuki world at the time? But hey, listen, isn't it fantastic to see Cros out there on that beautiful RG, with that thing running so beautifully. It's an absolute credit to Mike and Stu for getting that going, you know, and Cros, isn't it great to ride that thing?
Absolutely. You know, the thing that I didn't realise when I was really young was the fact that there is life after Grand Prix racing, and it's, you know, it gets to a point where, you know, 30, almost maybe 40 years later, you get these invitations to go to different places, and you get on the bike and you think, oh, this is fucking great, you know. And the piles of shit. This, I've got to say, the first time I've ever and I mean this sincerely to Stu, wherever he is, what a brilliant job you've done. Because I jumped on this bike and I thought, fuck, this is all right. It just reminded me exactly when I was racing the XR35s and 34s back in 80-81, which Jeremy and Mike were part of, although they were on the other fucking team. The Randy team. Anyway, we won't go on to that. I think what we will do, of course, is compare books, you know, because obviously he's got a story and I'd like to read it. I haven't started it yet, but I've looked at the title page, so it's quite good to be able to put that sort of storyline into history and actually have it available for everybody to learn from. Because, you know, when I think about it, I mean, Grand Prix riders themselves are actually the ones that usually get all the accolades and they run around and Radar can support me on this one. He's the one that does all the work, or did all the work. But you know, we were the ones that kind of got all the accolades. But really, behind all of that, the work ethics that you have already alluded to with Mike, the way that they work hard. They might play hard, but they actually produce some pretty damn good machinery for us that we can just get out there and sort of play, I suppose, because all the work's been done. So I've got to say, it doesn't take, you know, it's not very often that you get the opportunity, but I would like to say thanks to all those Grand Prix riders, not necessarily just only Radar because he was part of it, but all the other people in all of the various teams, because they have a long-term thing, you know. I mean, riders come and go and we have our days in the sun, but the Grand Prix riders, the Grand Prix mechanics and the associated people that make Grand Prix racing so good, it's kind of like ships in the night. You know, they kind of float past everybody over a long period of time and kind of sail, for the want of a better word, under the radar. So it's really nice to have an opportunity like this to actually acknowledge the work that these guys have done. So I'd just like to say thanks. And I think a round of applause to these guys, please.
Thanks, Graeme. Listen, it's just fantastic to have all these guys here in the room, isn't it? You know, sharing their experiences. And speaking of experiences, I thought I grabbed this clip, and I'm sure you've seen this a few times, but in fact, this is Randy. So I'm kind of easing into the Randy era, and this is an absolute classic. This is in the days when Randy just got off the Suzuki, and Michael and TT, one of our friends, was looking after it, and this is a great one.
By an estimated 120 million feet. That's the absolute closest you can get to crashing without actually falling upwards. Well, the understatement of the year is to say you had a bit of a moment this afternoon. Let's just talk about it from what you remember.
Well, I've been having a lot of problems coming out of that corner, and we've been trying a little bit harder compound tire, but because of the weather, we're not too sure what time we're going to run. And it was a little bit harder, and we tried a little bit adjustment on the spring. And coming out of that corner, if you look, it's really hard to spot, but I spotted it as I watched the replay. The back tire starts to jump just a little bit, and then it goes sideways. And it goes sideways so quick there that I just had time to catch it. I actually really didn't catch it. I came back underneath to get back on. I just went side and tried to pull myself up towards the left-hand side of the bike to keep my legs off the ground. See the Lucas they were waving to me and saying like, go get him. And so it's pretty spectacular, I think, from the other person's view. For as far as me, I just went, oh, here I go again. And I went, oh, I got this one, I'm saving it. And it was pretty funny to see afterwards.
Is it true that your next trick is to go out and lasso a young calf?
I'll try to stick to racing and stick to the pavement, not the dirt.
The weather.
My summary from that clip was how difficult these 500s were to ride. And, you know, Magee, isn't it great? The way Kevin is hurtling around Timaru, pitching it in, so much confidence in that YZR, but boy, can they bite. So that kind of leads me on into the Roberts days, because Kenny came along and said, you know, listen, we'll start my own team, off we went, the Yamahas, and this was in the Randy and Mike Baldwin days. And one of the great ones that I remember was Michael said, Kenny came up to Michael at one stage and said, listen, how's Randy going and all that sort of stuff. And all Michael could say was, bloody Randy's out there giving us traffic reports. because there was always a reason for Randy not to be able to do a lap time or whatever. There's too many bloody riders out there and I can't get around these guys and there's bloody traffic here and traffic there and what would you like to do? So Michael would come and say, how is he going? Well, he's giving bloody traffic reports.
Here I am, Mike Sinclair, being asked to do a little video clip on you. I guess you're having a book launch December 2nd. Paul Tracy asked me to do a piece on it. Well, listen, the fondest memories I have of Mike Sinclair are back when I was in New Zealand in 1974-75. I went down there with my father and obviously my manager at the time, Jim Doyle. You truly were part of and I was truly part of a great era of Grand Prix racing. It was a New Zealand Marlboro Series, obviously. I was only 14 years old, but being a part of with Greg Hansford and Warren Willing, Stuart Mont, Pat Hennen, who I know that you went off to Europe with eventually, and was one of the top Americans at that time, way before Kenny Roberts had gone over to win his titles. But then, of course, we met again. I mean, you had me down in New Zealand, but we met again, and you worked with me, along with Suzuki, TT Giran, Jeremy Burgess. We were something very, very special as a team. I know that I never won the world title, but some people like you who kept us going, kept us motivating. I know you come from New Zealand, and I can say that everybody who ever comes from New Zealand are somebody very special, very kind people. It was always great to know you. But really, the fond memories in Grand Prix were something special back then. The era that we lived in was pure racing, pure fun, and looking back at it, it's something lost, I think, in modern day racing, is the friendship that we all had. Good luck to you as you're doing the rest of your life, and so on and so forth. Maybe one day I can come down to New Zealand, or you guys can come this way to California and or Spain and share a little time together. But tonight on your book launch, I congratulate you. Mike Sinclair, thank you.
So that's pretty cool. Leads us into the days of when Randy and Mike, of course, Mike Baldwin got hurt, and there was this young Kiwi guy going pretty good in European Championships. So Scotty came along. Scotty, you got to have a couple of words up here, mate. Yep.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I had my stint at Grand Prix and was lucky or unlucky to be invited by Kenny Roberts' team to join them because Mike Baldwin crashed and put himself out for maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 Grand Prix, and that opportunity was too good to not take, and it was a huge opportunity, and I started off okay for about 29 laps at Rijeka, and had a bit of a moment, turned into a big crash, and sort of started from there really. I thought, sure, that's not a great start, first day out, and the bike went in the rubbish bin, and I did hear it was probably the worst wrecked bike that Mike had ever seen. But anyway, a couple of weeks later we're at Austria, and I was going pretty good. Felt pretty good, a little bit beat up, and this guy fell just low-sided in front of me. I couldn't believe it, and so I landed on him, and I think that bike went in the bin as well. Factory Yamaha, so I just couldn't believe it, and so it was all getting a bit pear-shaped, but everyone was very patient, overly patient I would have thought, actually, and Kenny was fine, he didn't seem to care about the damage, and yeah, I was doing it, but it was certainly, I didn't achieve what these other guys up here achieved at Grand Prix level, and I certainly admire these guys because it's it's pretty heavy going out there, and they can take you for a ride, those bikes, especially back then. If you didn't get it right, they pitched you off pretty quick. But Mike was pretty patient with us, and I probably didn't give a lot of good feedback through those days. I was sort of just pitching it off everywhere, and Paul was pretty patient, but I did get Paul this job, as he's alluded to before, which I'm pretty proud of. And you're doing great, Paul. And Mike, great, excellent. Look forward to reading that book. All the best.
And wasn't it great to see Scotty out there on Greg's KR 750 today? Thank you, Gary. Very cool to see Scotty out there. And listen, Scotty was an exceptional rider in those days. You know, we won the British Superstock Series. Who won? Second. That's right, second to Kenny Irons. With our great friend Ron Graham. You know, we're cutting crankshafts in half and changing firing orders, and it was just out of control. We had a lot of fun, and that led me into our team, you know, in those days. So, well done, Scotty. It leads us into the life, of course, of our other esteemed guest here. Esteemed is pretty tough on the student, but Kevin Magee. Isn't it fantastic to have Kevin here, and Tommy and I and Stu and Michael, we just love having Kevin riding the bikes. He's so professional. I mean, I worked with him for many years, and it's like when I'm out here, even in Timaru, it's just like we worked together yesterday. And I mean, it's the same thing, just a quick nod, a little nod, just all of it, we're just on automatic. And he's riding just so well. Even though he's not, 9/10 or 8/10 or anything like that, but I mean, he's just absolutely fluid. He went out there and did that first lap, and he said, "No, and he came in, and I was like, "Oh, what have we broken?" But no, he said, "Oh no, there's too many riders around." He said, "Oh, I did one lap, I know where the track goes. That'll do. Yeah, that's fine. I don't like the traffic out there, so no, I'm fine. We'll just go out there next time." I mean, that's a true professional. So Kevin, come and say a few words about our life, and particularly Mike. This is about Mike, not about
you. Yeah, exactly. That's what it's about. Mike Sinclair. I've actually worked out, I'm glad that I'm later in the show, because I've worked out that steely glare is not a steely glare. It's like he looks at you after you get off the bike, and he's working out, like, each and every syllable that comes out of your mouth, he's processing through some sort of microchip that goes into a whole different lot of categories. Where I'm just thinking that, the shit head's running wide or something like that when you get on the throttle, but he's got a whole different category of solutions to come up with. And talking to Mike earlier tonight, and was saying where we first met, and I remember him telling me that was, well, between the two of us, we came up with Japan in '87, which was my first wild card. That didn't go so well, ended up in the gravel. But he did tell me after the race that Randy Mamola did win in the wet, that the rings were worn that far, they were more or less brand new at the start of the race, and the piston rings wear down that much with all the road drum and gunk going through the carburetors that, lucky they didn't sort of slip up the slide and jam in the ports. But from there on, a wild card at Aston, from my point of view, was because I was a wild card and Mike was, kingpin sort of thing, sorting out Randy and Mike Goldwyn, and Scotty was in there at Aston, I think, and Scotty was actually a threat because I was the only bloke in Australia trying to have a bit of a crack. The Kiwis are coming thick and fast. There was Slidey, there was Scotty, who was already there. I think you won the Surface Rare on the XJ 900, and that was like, geez, bastard, I'm trying to get the better of these guys. Obviously Robert Holden, God rest his soul, was a big threat. And anyway, back to Sinclair, back to Haram, the third wild card, and there was more advice. And then I started working out that this guy was, pretty smart, because he didn't say much, but what he said, when you took it away and actually worked what he said through and actually applied it, it came out on the stopwatch. And that was what sort of helped me amazingly to get really quick on a 500 that was so difficult to ride compared to you know, a Marlboro Superbike or whatever, 750,000cc 4-cylinder 4-stroke. And then Mike, I joined Lucky Strike Yamaha with Kenny and Wayne Rainey in '88 for the full season. And Mike was my engineer, which was great. Ended up winning the third race at Arama, then went to Jerez, never been there before, ran third. And Eddie come through and won on the Michelins once the Dunlops had died off a little bit. Rainey got second, and then we went to Imola, and Kenny changed the whole sort of pecking order and the way the whole team worked, and Sinclair was gone, and my things sort of scuttled from there. But that was it. Like, Sinclair was a genius, and we sort of got on pretty well as well. And I think it's an amazing thing that this book's been written, and I can't wait to read it, to read all the other Stuart Vonchon boots and all the rest of the stuff that JB, Crosby, all the inside stories that when I was nowhere near even road racing, all the stuff these guys were doing overseas, when, you know, I finally got there, it was like you get sort of shipped out as a unit. You know, these guys did it off the bat, like sort of, I guess, the Burt Munro style, you know, a little bit more modern than Burt Munro. And, you know, Cros is the other one, and Tracy being the mechanic and stuff. But it was just an amazing thing, and I think that it's taken this long for someone to squeeze all that information out of Sinclair is a key point that I want to get, and I just can't wait to read the thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin, and we really look forward to seeing Kevin out there tomorrow. Just don't ride too hard. It leads us on to the Wayne days. And of course, Wayne Rainey days were very successful for Kenny's team, and so much so, 3 World Championships. And in those days, as JB was saying, those Hondas were absolute jets. And we were always struggling with horsepower. We would spend, Michael and I would go out to Bud's Dyno out in California. We'd do literally hundreds of runs, where Mike would be making exhaust pipes all night, Bud would be, you know, filling the cylinders. You know, and this was great in those days. I mean, you just can't do that anymore in the Japanese era. The Japanese factories won't let you touch anything. And Kenny just basically said, well, typical Kenny, 2 fingers to the Japanese, we'll be doing it anyway. And so we had a lot of fun. Mike and I and Wayne, absolute plethora of riders that we threw our organisation. But I guess, as Cros rightly said, you know, behind every great man is another great man. And you know, that's a classic photo of Wayne and Mike. Very cool. So of course,
hello, Mike. Hey, I'm sorry I couldn't be over there with with the party, with all of your friends and family, but I've been asked to say a few words. Certainly, I couldn't have done what I did without you, a part of my racing career in Grand Prix. I remember in 1988 when Kevin Magee was my teammate. And I figured out right away that I had to get you away from him. So I worked my nuts off to try to make that happen, and I was able to muscle my way to get you to come over to my side. So sorry about that, Kevin. But you know, just from there, you know, we started winning races and finishing on the podiums. And then we ended up second place, and then in 1990 we won our first world championship, and then we won the next couple in a row. And I remember the races that stuck out most in my mind was not the ones that we won, it was the ones that we lost. And I remember the parties that we would have during those races were always very special. You could always tell when we lost because that was the party that you always fell asleep early at. So, I think about you a lot. I miss you, and I thank you for everything that you did in my career. And I am a 3-time world champion because of you. So thank you very much. Hope to see you soon, Mike. Say hello to everybody. Bye.
Yeah, that's pretty special. And of course we had a long list of riders in our day. Clearly when we had the cigarette sponsorship in the Mamola days, actually at one stage we got up to about 120 personnel to run a team. I mean, it was nuts. But we had some fantastic riders. And I remember one of them actually was very special, was Jean-Michel Bale. And he was a very special rider. He'd come out of motocross, then he was out of motocross out of France, then went and did Supercross in the US and won that. And then you know what, he said, oh, okay, I've done that, I'll go and ride at Grand Prix. So he jumped on a 250 production, 250, not a factory bike, and he went out there. Oh my God, and he did the hard yards, didn't he? He was a bloody hard-working guy. He was really talented. It's a little shame he never really kind of cracked it, but he was a pretty special rider, wasn't he? So, and there's a lot of guys in that era, and and I'll tell you about a quick story, and I think it's in the book. So Eddie came along. Eddie was Wayne's teammate, and to be honest, Eddie and Wayne fought each other all the time. And Wayne was going quicker and quicker and quicker, and Eddie was struggling to get up with it. I can't remember, where was it? Was it Checo? I think it was Checo, Bernard, wasn't it? Yeah. And Eddie was bitching and moaning, saying he couldn't go faster. He said, you know what it is? It's you bloody Kiwis and Australians, because Warren Willing was with us and Michael there. You bloody Kiwis and Australians, you just bloody, you hate me. And I tell you what, you guys are rigging the spikes. And you know what? I'm just over you. So then the team manager, Howard, what's his name? Gary Howard came along, and the big bloody meeting, and Eddie Lawson's throwing his bloody toys out of bed. And so Mike, calm as anything, just said, well, that's fine. He said, we'll just take the numbers off that bike and put it on that bike. So literally, we took the fairings off Eddie's bikes, swapped them with Wayne's bikes. So there we go. Well, the obvious thing happened, didn't it? Because Wayne just went faster and faster. That was a pretty good solution to that problem. And as for a bit of madness, then Kenny decided, oh yeah, we can do it better than the Japanese. Nice one, Kenny. Must have been nuts. He decided to build his own motorcycle. And he actually built that bike with of course, you'd normally think KTM nowadays, they've been working on that for about 3 or 4 years. No, Kenny said, no, we'll build that in 6 months. So we built this KR3, Mike and Warren and a bunch of guys, we built that KR3 in 6 months. Everything, engine, ignitions, chassis, you name it, in 6 months. It nearly killed us. It was a really interesting project. It was very lightweight, very fast, and I think eventually it ended up Jeremy McWilliams' pole at Phillip Island.
131 or something.
Yeah, unbelievable, that thing.
And he was Irish.
And he was Irish. But that's, you think about Kiwi, Aussie ingenuity, that's what it was. And they were, I don't say they were great, but they were, it was a really interesting project. So I thought we'd better introduce the crazy guy.
Mike Sinclair, doing a book. Took me a while to write this or take this because I was wondering what was in it. Starting with Team Roberts, I suppose it's getting traffic reports from Randy Mamola, all the way bringing the team up to winning 2 world championships in 1990. Wayne Rainey's first. And Never mind, I don't know the other guy. Anyway, to building your own Grand Prix bike, I suppose that's in it in 6 months. That's never been done, probably never be done again. And what I was thinking, what shouldn't be in it? And I suppose waking up with your clothes on all them days in Amsterdam on the floor, driving around in that stupid looking station wagon designed from the moon, wishing that Skippy would have took a shower, to the first three-cylinder appearance in Malaysia, sitting on the grid, plugging in the gas, turning on the switch and watching the gas spill out all over the racetrack. That probably isn't in it. And I know you didn't stay up late doing this book because you're the only guy that could fall asleep during the food fights at Team Roberts victory dinners. But other than that, well deserved. We had a great time. I enjoyed it tremendously, and I hope your book is successful. If this doesn't turn out, it's not my fault as usual, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But great success. I hope it's successful for you, and hope to see you soon. Good luck and cheers, mate.
Oh my God, Kenny is a character, isn't he? And, you know, listen, I was thinking about this. It'd be lovely to have KR down here one day at an event like this. You know, and both him and Randy and all those guys, you know, it's been fantastic getting everybody together. And I think, honestly, these guys will come down. You know, let's keep growing on this.
Never say never.
Never say never. And I wanted to just touch on one of our mates that we lost last year, Warren Willick. You know, really, you know, special guy, Aussies and Kiwis working really well together. Great mate, and you know, I can't help but look at those carburetors. We made those carburetors for the KR3. We made them from nothing. Used bits and bobs and noodle jets out of this and that and the other thing. They were an amazing little piece of work, and both Mike and Warren was an amazing project. Sorry to lose Warren. He was a great mate of Stu's actually in later years, and but we had an awful lot of fun. A few of the other guys, of course, Norik Abe, he was pretty special. He went good, that boy, and such a humble Japanese guy. We really had a fantastic time with Norik. Unfortunately, he actually got killed in a scooter accident. Yeah, lovely guy. What a lovely photo. Of course, we better Mike Webb. You know, the Kiwis keep coming. Look out, Aussies. You know, this is Mike Webb. Who's nowadays he's the race director of MotoGP. Quite a role. And Mike put this together.
Hey Mike, g'day from Race Control. Congratulations on the book launch and good luck. I'm really looking forward to reading the book. I just want to say a really big thank you for being a great colleague, a really, really great teacher in our time together at Yamaha. You were a real inspiration to all of us. And it was because you were always thinking, always logical, always ready to try things. It was a great time. I learned a lot. Everybody knows you had loads of success, you won lots of races, lots of world championships, but perhaps some of the less well-known things were maybe more interesting to us. Projects like the E2, like the L1, maybe didn't win any races, but they taught us a lot, and to me, more than anything else, proved how much respect the Japanese engineers had for you. They held you in really high regard, so much so that they would build the bikes that you asked for, and to me that says a lot. It was a huge pleasure to work with you, a real big honour. Thank you very much, and good luck with you. Cheers.
Yeah, so very, very cool. And nowadays, actually some of the Japanese that we work with in the Yamaha team were very special. We had, of course, Sakurada-san, who was an awesome engineer, and of course his nickname was Susie. And I think that was nicknamed by Michael. We called him Susie, didn't we? And we said if you didn't get that bike right, it'd be off to go and design rear tail light lenses for something. But a few of the guys are still around in MotoGP and still working on the Yamaha and working in Rossi's on the Yamaha team. So of course one of those characters is still in the game as old Sumi-san. Remember his nickname was Smiley actually. And he was still one of their project engineers and he did this little clip for us.
Hi Mike, what are you doing? Help somebody. You will make new book. Can you do sure? That's all. See you.
Old Smiley son. Real character. So, and of course, Nakajima-san, he's the head of Yamaha MotoGP project. So he's a great guy actually, and you wouldn't have to work out what his nickname was with the Kiwis and Aussies. Of course, this is Knackers. He said this.
Hi Mike. Congratulations for publication of the book. It's very nice that your journey is in the book. From 17th club team through to Yamaha factory team. Now you are one of the legends in the racing history. I hope your life is going well, and I believe you can make people happy around you. Bye Mike, sayonara.
Wasn't that great? Knackers. And as we're coming to the end of this a little bit, but you know, the fun continues. Tom, Stu, Magee, and great to have Crosby riding as well. We really are having a lot of fun. We're always smiling. I don't think we're smiling that much around that XR23, what do you know? But listen, it's just fantastic. Well done, Michael. Listen, lots of more fun years. One thing Michael and I got right into in Europe, of course, and he got me into it also, was windsurfing. And Michael came back to New Zealand really after the after working with Max Biaggi. That'll be enough to finish you off. And I think it actually did finish you off. But thanks, Mike. We have a lot of fun together. Very impressed with your mode of transport. You picked me up in the fantastic, 30-year-old high ace.
I've got sickness to that.
Team transport.
The quick shifter.
What do you bitch about? You got a 6.
And before we pass you over to back to Kerry and Bryce, the general manager of Bowden Publishing, Stu's got to cut that. What's that? A quick word.
Look, we've forgotten about Paul, and just here, we've been working on this for about the last 3 months, but he's mostly been working on it, and Sal's had to put up with his shit as usual. And before I just wanted to slip past without saying that it's been a cracking night. I mean, you pay money, if you'd actually go and see this World Bike, it's like going to the best show of your life. And Paul put it all together, and I'd really, really like to thank him for doing it. Otherwise, it would have been just an amateur bullshit thing if I'd been involved. So thank you so much to Paul before he finishes, and I'd like to really say thank you for the effort, mate. You've really done well. Congratulations, pal.
Thanks, Stewie. I really do have fun doing it. And poor Sal, I don't know how she puts up with me. There's not many women here tonight, but when you find one, they're pretty good to be around. So listen, we've got I thought we'd pass it over. First, Bryce, if you're here, would like to come and have a quick word. Have you got here, Bryce?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Have a quick word. Bryce is the general manager of Bateman Publishing, and to take on a motorcycle book, I think is fantastic. Well done. And after that, we're going to give a little bit of a break. We have a little bit of change of scene because one of the funniest things you can have actually in motorcycling is having Robbie Phillips in your presence. And of course, his best mate, Aaron Slight. We're going to pass it over to those two hooligans, and they will keep us entertained while first off, I'll go and have a beer. So, thanks, Bryce. Have a quick word before we bring those
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bryce Gibson. I'm the General Manager of David Bateman Limited. We're a New Zealand publishing company, and I've been invited along here today to actually sell some books, so hopefully you can all come and buy a book afterwards. Firstly, what a fantastic event today is, and I'm sure tomorrow will be. It's a great piece of Kiwiana. I was just wandering around today seeing people stocked in tents, and some got caravans, and it's all really New Zealandish, I think, and I think that's a remarkable thing that you people have going on, and long may it keep going. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate being here. Bateman's is a family-owned publishing company. We're based in Auckland. We publish books on New Zealand and New Zealanders, and sometimes New Zealanders who we don't know anything about. And on this occasion, the publisher Bill Honeybone came along and said to me, "We're publishing a book on Mike Sinclair." You know, yes, and what does he do? He goes, "He's a famous motorcycle man. I promise you it will sell." And today I found out that actually he is a famous New Zealander, but he's probably more famous overseas. This is a key thing we look for in books, something that can bring, something that will be a little bit different, and I think you brought that to the book today. There's a few key people that we need to thank. The people who worked on the book. Bill Honeybone, our publisher. He's a very unique publisher. He sees motor racing books on a level that most people don't see, and thank God we've got him to publish this type of book. We've also got a Kiwi Speedway book out this year, and we've got Kenny Smith's biography coming out as well. The other people who need to be thanked are Nick McCloy, the editor, Cheryl Smith, the designer, and also a special thanks to Sue and the team at Classic Action Motorsports for all the help and support during the weekend here at Levels that have given us. I'll be sitting outside trying to sell some more of these books. I'll be here tomorrow. Mike and Kerry, thank you both for producing such a fantastic book, and I hope it goes on to sell and be a bestseller. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bryce. And little sales job for them. Yeah, please buy their book. It's just fantastic. Get Mike to sign it over the next couple of days, and thank you very much for your support. Righto, boys. You're right. And this is, and we'd like to, and while these guys have something, we'll get them going. I can wind them up about any subject, so that's okay. I'll get you going. And after that, maybe any questions from the floor or some of the things you've heard about in Grand Prix in those days. Happy to take a couple of questions for Mike. And he's a talkative chap, so you know. So I'll be able to translate that for you. So we'll just have a little digression in the Robbie and Aaron show. And perhaps one of the guys that we could probably grab up here as well is Peter Doyle. Doyle, you here? Doyle, get yourself up the front, mate. So Peter Doyle, it's fantastic to have Peter here. He's the Chief Executive of Motorcycling Australia. And we've got radar. Peter Doyle's head of Motorcycling Australia, which is a very large role, and he's really working hard at rejuvenating road racing in this part of in Australia and New Zealand. But Peter and those days was a team manager for these two guys, two Kawasaki, and Doyle was responsible for trying to keep these guys in check. But Doyle, perhaps you would like to just start off by asking Robbie a couple of really dodgy questions.
Oh, come on.
No, I think I could start off with, I met Aaron in Sugo. I met in Sugo in 1988, and we're over there. Magoo might have been there, a few of the boys were there, and Aaron was running around on the super range with Yamaha, and we were over there, and we were looking for a rider in Australia, and watched Aaron go around. Eddie, nice kid. We were over there destroying go-karts and all that stuff people did in the day, golf carts, go-karts. And we then looked at Aaron, he was pretty good, so we invited him to ride back in Australia and for the Swan Series. And got back to Australia, and we told Robbie, who didn't really have too many teammates in those days, and said, "Oh, Aaron's hype," and he said, "He's a bloody Kiwi." He said no, and as it turned out, Aaron came over and rode Robbie's GPX, which he'd just actually finished defeating Mick Doohan on in the Australian Championship. But the Swan Series was an open class event, and the Yamaha boys had their thousands there, and Aaron rode the 750, but rode the wheels off it, and Robbie had a Formula 1 bike, which he threw into the weeds and destroyed. Aaron did a pretty good job, so we hired him on the next year, and they came from who's this Kiwi to they became great mates. We went to Europe together, they lived together, trained together, or Aaron trained, Robbie watched.
Told him what to do.
We travelled the world, and Aaron was a little bit shocked there for quite a while, I think, at some of the antics that went on behind the scene with Robbie, and it all came out. I think one day, I think we were on a bus somewhere, or in a bar somewhere, and Robbie performed his party trick, and Aaron witnessed it for the first time, and he's never looked back. Become great friends, and it was good to see, and it was a great part of my life and a lot of other people's life to watch these two grow together in the World Championship for the next 4 or 5 years.
So Robbie, we want to say, what's probably your best story? Tell a story about Doyley then. That's always, rather than pick on your teammate. What about the team owner? What sort of mischief would he create?
Well, I can't really say things like that. Like that's That's not a good thing to talk about. What the mongrel things he did. It was bad. But we had a good time. We were like a family, I guess. We'd all have our little lovers kiss and make up, like we still do. Like Radar was all a part of it as well. He should be up here with us too, because he was just as big a terror as anybody else, or small terror. And but yeah, I don't know. Like
he's taking too long.
Yeah, I'm taking too long. Yeah, come on.
All right, Eric, start getting.
I've got a little story. We had another great mechanic, Reg, was in our team as well. And I didn't realise that Reg had false teeth. And every time Reg got me to hold his false teeth, he'd fly off the handle and beat someone. But I knew this, and then Pete says to me, it was in Brisbane, he said to me, just go and see how Reg's his sister's getting on, and how she's doing in her running. So I go over there and Reg said, how's your sister going with her running? She says, my sister's in a wheelchair. So he looks at me, he says, and then he takes his teeth out. And I was fucking bold. It was just a wind-up.
Robbie, you must have an Aaron story. Aaron and Megan turned up,
Can I tell the one about the trail ride in the bush? Or
I think I've told that one, but like, there's so many stories, you know, and stuff that we did, but some of it's a bit below the belt. I suppose I can't. There's a few ladies here too, but nothing despicable, you know. But we went one day. We borrowed from is that all right to tell this story? We borrowed 3 KLR 650s from Herr Sin, Gert Sin, because we lived out the back of Kawasaki in Frankfurt, which or the suburb of Friedrichsdorf, and I had my mate from home staying. He's come over for a month or so, and Aaron. This is actually '94 because Aaron was riding for Honda then, and he came and stayed there as well because all the crew at Kawasaki loved him, and it was all grouse, you know. And so we get these 3 bikes. We go for a trail ride in the bush, which you're not allowed to do. So there's no number plates or anything like that. So we just, cause, you know, there's people walking around everywhere and they write little notes down with the registration label and all that stuff. But we go for a ride in the bush. I've crashed about 13 times or something in that day because it was quite muddy and stuff. And anyhow, we're standing. My mate Drapes. We're just sitting there talking. Aaron's around the back of the tree taking a dump.
This is from a guy who's got a poo fetish.
So then Drapes and I are just talking, you know, and then we look around and he's come around from the back of this tree with his poo on a stick. And he starts running towards us, so we take off up the track. And he's just flicked it and got Drapes on the back of the leg. Well, that's one story.
But we were last week. We were at down at the Burman Road, and I said to Robbie, "Where are you?" He says, "I'm in room 88 having a poo." I haven't talked to him for 3 months. That was all I got.
So the polar opposites of these 2 guys, Aaron won the 8-hour race in 1993, and he first time at Kawasaki, first time I'd ever won it, and we were based in Germany, and it was Scott Russell and Aaron went over there and won the race. So Aaron comes back to Germany, and Megan's there, and Megan says, "We're going to shout dinner." So down there, and they bought the $2 steak, not the $10 steak, and Aaron just won more money, and his words, "I won more money in my life today than I've ever won before," right? So he bought the cheapest steak. Phyllis goes out one day to the hardware shop to buy some screws and nails, and comes back with a BMW and a 25-foot caravan. These are the guys that we had to live with.
What about? We had this. Oh yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. But we had this KSR 80 and a KSR 50, which are the little mini motard mini bike, you know, Kawasaki thing. So we've got this track through, because we've got the woods right out the back, you know, it's a forest, you know, like, or the woods. And we've got this track, and we've all taken lap times, and Radar's got these, like you weren't allowed, you had to wear thongs, you weren't allowed to wear a helmet. And you had to have a stubby between each race. It was a lap time. So Radar comes out with his thongs on and these pair of pink snow goggles because there was bugs everywhere and he was getting shit in his eyes, you know, he couldn't see. So then Reg, was it you or Reg who got the bucket of water?
It sounds like Superbike people aren't serious, like these Grand Prix guys.
Yeah. So you got the stopwatch, you know, you get the warm-up lap and then the flying lap, and you go through, you know. You've had the stubby and you get the lap time, but we come through one corner and there's all this water and it's clay, you know. So you endo through the friggin' trees, you know. Like it's just you can't get through the turn. But the problem was Aaron and I were half okay at it was always really competitive between the two of us with the lap time, but when your team boss can do a lap time faster than the riders, it's a real drama, and you never ever hear the end of it, and you still don't hear the end of it. It was a fair prick about it. Weren't you, Peter?
I don't know really. Yeah, it's quite funny. We were talking last night actually about where does motorcycling go, and how do we produce champions and blah blah blah. And I think we've heard tonight that it's just I don't think there is any rhyme or reason to go Grand Prix or to go Super or whatever. You just do it for the fun of it, and great relationships like Rob and mine have come from this, and Peter, and there is no recipe, and I mean, why would you do it if you didn't want to do it? And that's the big thing, and I think this is virtue of it tonight is everybody pulling together because it's what they want to do. And for me, motorcycling was one of the biggest educators of my whole life. The world travel I did, stuff like that, and what I've gone on to do is because of travelling with motorcycling. So, I can't thank motorcycling and enthusiasts for all these times. And this is how we get to talk about all these good stories. Yeah.
I just wanted to clear up those lap times. Aaron was fastest. Peter couldn't live with that. Peter knocked down about 10 6-inch trees to beat his time with his shoulders. Robbie was behind me about 4th. Reg started to get the better of him. He said, Reg, slow down. Robbie's not going to go any good at the next race if we're all quicker than him.
What about, you want that story from Canada to...
I think we'll talk about the Brett first. New Zealand engineer, so Mark Barnett happened to work with us, and we were travelling through Europe, and we...
Who's now, by the way, on the MotoGP KTM project doing engines. Another Kiwi boy.
Yep. So Mark worked with us, and we were driving back from down south of Europe one day, and Radar, Mark, myself, and Robbie actually, and we were in the caravan, we had the caravan behind, and we were driving along and had the truck, and we pulled over. We got too tired, couldn't find a hotel, so we all 4 of us sleep in the caravan. It's 2 double beds. Oh. So who's going to sleep with who? So of course nobody wanted to sleep with Robbie. So we drew straws and I lost. So I crawled into bed. God, when was the last time you washed the sheets? And I found a sock in the bed. Pulled the sock out and what have you been doing with the sock?
What do I say? Stu was talking about that before, weren't we? There's Peter. Was Reg with us? Yeah, Reg. Peter, Reg. We went to Canada to do the race there, the World Supers race. Then we drove from there to Rainey, which is like a long way. And we had all these plans. We're going to go to Niagara Falls and have a look at that. We're going to go to Detroit and check out all that. No, we just kept driving, and we were speeding along. And like it was 60 mile an hour speed limit or something like that. And everyone's having a go at driving, and we were doing like 85 mile an hour or something like that in places. And then it was my turn to steer, and there was an ambulance in front of us with his lights going, and no, he's behind us, wasn't he? Yeah, that's right. And he overtakes us, and he's doing like 85 mile an hour or something like that. So we're up his arse. And we're going, 200 for 200. But the straw that really broke the camel's back was when I overtook the ambulance. We were in a van, right? What was it? It was like a people mover, you know, the Chrysler or Voyager or some shit like that. It'd only do 103 mile an hour. So the copper record. So I was, you jump out of the car, of course you jump out of the car to give the cop your licence. Don't move, sir. Get back in the car. You've got this fucking big gun, So anyhow, it's $379 US fine for bail. And I didn't have any money. And we go, oh, look at these guys. Bruce was with us.
Going to back up a little bit.
Oh, sorry, yeah, go on.
We told you to stop. We told you to stop. We said, Robbie, don't do this. Don't do it. Just follow the ambulance.
So anyhow, you have to follow us back to the station, sir. So we go back to the station and they took my fingerprints. Then I had to pay this money, and I'm not going to these guys tell, I've got no money. I thought I was going to get locked up.
We all went, we haven't got any money.
So, where did the money come from?
The cop said to us, you guys have to come up with the money or he's going to jail. We said, we haven't got the money. So they carted Robbie off and we went to the coffee shop, had a few drinks and coffee and food. And they put him away for a while. A few hours later we had to go and get the money to get him out of jail. So
I said what happened. So that was pretty interesting. So then, I had to go to court, which is not going to happen because we had to go back to Europe, So we're going to have the race and all that stuff. And I've jumped bail, got on the plane, gone back to Germany where we were living. But then we had to come back next year. And I was shitting myself because I'm thinking I'm going to go to jail because I've jumped bail. And I guess they didn't have computer systems like that, like they do these days. So this is 1990. And luckily, we came in by road in what state was it? Minnesota or something, yeah. And so I guess they didn't do the paperwork properly, because we flew directly into there the next time. And I was shitting myself. I got off the plane, I'm looking around, I'm going to go to jail, And luckily, nothing happened. But that was just another episode, that a fun thing turns to shit, And they don't see the funny side.
Just fantastic to have these guys around recounting our lives. I do remember a similar story to that. Michael and I were out for a test in Barcelona. We were late as hell for the bloody flight, and TT was driving the old Citroen, and we got locked. Same deal. The ambulance went past. We got locked in behind the ambulance. We went right around Barcelona behind the ambulance, and got us to the airport on time. Hey, so thanks, boys. Thanks very much. A big round of applause for. And I'd just like to finish things out. I've got a little video here. Hey, sorry, it's not embedded in the thing right, but anyway, we'll run. One of Stu's favourite videos was when Stu and Tom were thinking about purchasing the YZR that they found in the back blocks of Japan. We found this video, and if you think these things are easy to ride, and you think these things can't bite you, have a little look at this one. Hopefully this will run okay.
It's the same bike.
This is exactly the same bike as we've got out here. I'll just try and make it. Sorry, I'm not very organised on this one. But check this one out. If you think the YZR can't bite.
This is the same bike right here.
Right. So Magee, you got to counter that one because he'll have some excuse. It'll be the mechanic's fault, it'll be the tyre valve's fault, or it'll be something, you know. But anyway, Kevin, I was not going to put words in your mouth.
I nearly flew, just happened to hang on to it. The story behind that one was young Daryl Beattie was over in Japan and we raced head-to-head in '92, and I was coming back from the head injury and all that from that Suzuki that I rode that spat me on my head and... What's that? Like Burley said, yeah, still coming back. Anyway, so it was the first weekend in November at Scuba in Japan, little go-kart track, and we've been doing all the testing and stuff, like that was the end of '92. We're getting the new frame, we're doing some frame development because the YZRs were great in '91, handling wise. Then in '92, the first frame we got on, it was shit. Nothing less. The front end, you could not feel it, and it would just throw you down the road quick and look at you. And that particular night, first weekend, went home, and the Japs have the system where it goes from summer to winter, and they just flick the big switch from air conditioning to heating. I was up all night, I was spitting green marbles, hiccuping, coughing, spewing, and just crapping my brains out. I had probably 6 times 10 minutes sleep, got out, went into the truck. Mike Howe, I said to Mike Howe, God rest his soul as well, I can't ride. You know, I was just, you know, when your head's spinning and your eyes are sort of pointing different directions and stuff. I said, Mike, I can't ride. He goes, oh, shut up, Crosby. And anyway, he goes, just go out and do warm up and see how you go. So I'm trying to put my leathers on in the back of the truck. I can't even stand on one leg. Like, my balance is that shit. I cannot stand on one leg. So shoulder against the wall, shuffle the right leg in, turn around, shuffle the left leg in, get them on, go out, break the lap record. But I've got no stamina. And it was like a 40 lap race or something. And I could get Daryl and check out, but then I was knackered. So then I'd drop back because I had no stamina. Then it come down to the end of the race and I thought, right, I'll get it. And that particular chassis, we didn't test at all. Sorry, I tested it on Saturday afternoon. And I said, it steers really good, but it's got no rear traction. And then that was still the same bike on the Sunday, so that was a bike we raced. And like I said, went through the race, that many laps, and it came down to the end of the race where I couldn't break Daryl and get away from him because I had no stamina. Lap time wise I could, but stamina wouldn't let me do it. And then it was like, I passed him on that last lap, led onto the back straight, and that's what happened. And when I went off into the fence, the thing was I was that knackered that when I had that little whoopsie early on when I got on the gas, because the Honda, I was sick of the Honda, like JB said before. They had the stink down the straight, and I knew Daryl was going to pass me down the back straight, so I got on the gas a little bit earlier, and it just went, and when it flicked me a little bit, I was just swinging off the back, like I was like Sinclair on his windsurfer. I was just hanging on, and it rolled the throttle on, and then it drove it out to the foam bales, and Daryl went past it. I was like, oh, you bastard, because I was busting my ass to try to get back to Europe to have a crack on the World Championships. Daryl won the championship, went to Grand Prix, the rest is history, and you know, Daryl went really well, runner-up to Mick, which was brilliant effort and all that, and then I was just doing the shit that I've been doing since.
And isn't it great, we've got exactly the same bike here, exactly the same rider, riding in Timaru.
Does it still hang out?
I'm actually too scared to do that kind of crap these days, to be perfectly honest. Right at that point, just before I hit the phone, I was like, fuck, I've got to keep it out of these bales.
All right. Thanks, Magoo. Always entertaining. Hey, listen, we'd like to, finish the night out, and I'd like to have a couple of questions from the audience. I'm sure you might have, please direct them towards Mike, and again, if I can translate. But it'd be great to have Mike, talking about whether computer-controlled rear shock systems that we did with Olin's, the Yamaha days, and Jeff Howie, you'd like to have a quick chat as well. But and maybe we start off by Jeff, but computer-controlled electronic suspension. I was talking to Lars and the boys, and I've got a video from Mats and Lars actually that it was a tour of their office. It's not really interesting, but it was great that Mats and Lars say a big hi. A computer-controlled electronic suspension that we worked on for probably 2 years with Olin's is their largest revenue earner in Olin's today, and it's an electronic damping system that goes into all the high-end cars, Mercedes, Audi, etc. And Olin's sell 5.5 million of those units a year, and we helped develop that in MotoGP, or in Grand Prix in our day. So that's pretty cool. So those sorts of questions, but quickly to Jeff Howie. Great to have Jeff here again. Jeff's an Australian, huge supporter, owner, works very closely with Gary, huge enthusiast. Jeff, you've got a couple of words?
I couldn't let this go by. In 1976, all those years ago, a couple of dudes came wandering over, we're in Modena, where they make the Ferraris in northern Italy. The racetrack was a perimeter road of the army camp near the Ferrari works. And there's these poor bastards from New Zealand turned up, and there's snow on the ground, and I thought, oh, they need help. And maybe an old stager, we've shown them the way. I was working for Phil Reed at the time and introduced them. And Mike didn't really advantage from this, but later on, Stuart was playing hide the salami with the rich blonde from down the road from Reading. And if I can just continue on, old Stuart, the Poms never got on with us colonials all that well. And this Pom one day says to Stuart, "Geez, you're a fat bastard, Stuart." And he said, "Oh, every time I fuck your wife, she gives me a biscuit."
Michael, as you can tell, we've been very lucky to live a fantastic life. It's not the normal life that most people would probably live, but we've had a lot of fun, and I think it's a great celebration, particularly of Mike's life. And Mike, I don't know, I don't quite know where to start with some of the stories, etc. But there's a lot of World Championships, there's a lot of fun, and we have a lot of fun out here. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for coming, and it's quite flattering when a bloke wants to write a story about your life, and I've never had any idea it would turn into something like this. But I was just the original schoolboy dreamer, and dreaming away about motorbike racing, and I got lucky. I got to live it all, and I knew all about these great riders and circuits, and got to actually go there and see them all. And I sort of had a go at racing myself, and I was kind of more interested in the mechanical side. My idea of perfection was to be a factory test rider. That was perfection for me, not the Grand Prix, because they're working with all the interesting stuff. And like all us mechanics actually had a more interesting time, I reckon, because it lasted longer. We got into much more interesting technology and the development of it. And you can see from guys like Cross, he wanted to be a mechanic all along. Look what he's doing now. And I reckon it was because the Hennens wouldn't let him touch anything, so he had to do the riding.
It's not been 40 years to work out how to do it.
But yeah, it was a real special time, and it was really special to get involved with a rider and get right inside his head and right inside the bikes, and it was almost like I was riding them. It was Pat Hennen was the first guy. He was Mr. Smooth and Mr. Fast, and we had a great old time. All of a sudden we're winning Grand Prix and Stu started it. Like, we went there at 76 and by the middle of the season we were running fourth in the World Championship on Tom McCleary's bike that he'd bought just as anybody else could buy it. And it was pretty special. And we came home and they put on a mayoral reception and we were big heroes. And went to Stu's head. Then, after Pat, then like Wayne Rainey was another deal where it was just like I was riding the bike. It was just a pleasure doing the work, and you spend all your time thinking about what the bike's doing, and you get results that way. And I work with some real interesting people, like John Michelle Bale, completely no ego, fantastic bloke. But he had a crash which we had to hide because you didn't get your money unless you ran a certain number of races during the season, and he had the crash early, and he had a big head injury that he was seeing stars and couldn't stand the bike and all that stuff, and so we had to hide it and sort of get through enough races to him to get his contract money and then bail out of it. And it was a bit of a shame. He was a real good rider, but most people don't really know what happened to John Michelle, but that was the end of that deal. But then I got lucky enough to work with Magee, and the Jabs said to me, nobody wanted him, but Yamaha wanted to run him, and they said, Mike, would you work with Max? And I thought, well, how bad can he be? But he was just as bad as they said. I mean, he was a fantastic rider in all that, but yeah, he was a marketing man more than a motorbike racer by then. And he kind of finished it up. I thought, look, this is not a lot of fun anymore, I'll go and do something else. But all wrong, fantastic career and great fun, and I really missed the technical stuff. Getting right into the bikes and what they're doing and why they're doing it, and I missed that, but it was a great time. And been lucky enough for Kerry to come along and write a book, want to write a book about it all. So I hope you all enjoy it.
And listen, let's just open up to the floor a little bit. You've got a bunch of great guys here. Some of them think they're stars. Robbie.
I was born to be warm.
So listen a bit. Pete, Donaldson. Got any questions for these boys?
No, sorry. No, I've been fortunate enough to read the book, and there are just so many amazing chapters in it. And all I can say is, just go and buy a copy of it, because you're going to learn so much. I mean, Mike is such a modest guy, and for Kerry to give all those words in the book, it is really pretty special. So, well done, Mike.
Well, thanks very much, everybody. I think it's pretty well rounded out. Has anybody got any questions you'd like to ask Mike or anybody? Here's one over here.
Mike, taking into account that success can be a combination of pure talent but also perhaps a little bit of luck, in all of your time on the MotoGP circus, who would you consider the most naturally talented MotoGP rider that you encountered?
I always thought if you had a race when the guys are 100, Will Harper would win it. He was real fast for a bloke who just treated motorbike racing like going down the tennis court and then began to tennis. That's how he treated it and won Grand Prix. He was a pretty special rider. I always thought he'd be the one. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? So many riders, so much talent. And we look at MotoGP today, and what a spectacle it is, online, etc. Times changing, electronics. I remember when we worked on these YZRs and so it was early days of data acquisition, and everybody hated that bloody wiring guy. He'd come along, they're used to working on cylinders and engines and all that sort of stuff, and these bloody wiring electrical guys would come along and cover all their stuff in wires. And they thought, and to be fair, that was Kenny. You and Kenny, you decided we better work out how to measure this stuff. And we had the first data acquisition systems. JB, of course, and the Hondas said, bugger that, we're not putting that crap on there. So.
Yeah, but it was a good race.
what there was, I'd come in at 9 o'clock at night. If he'd come in at 9 o'clock at night, we wouldn't have been in the pub by then. It was, I can see today where it is, and you can't ride the bikes today without this electronic addition. But in a world where we've got more population than we've ever had, and we've got more people out of work than we've ever had, and we've got electronics and robots taking our jobs away, you wonder where we're going to be in 50 years.
You know? No, you start a software company.
But yeah,
You'll be probably dead over 50 years.
Absolutely, I hope so.
Excuse me, Michael, can you please explain what your actions were on the side of Lake Taupo when we're coming back in 1976? The prisoner escaped to attract attention at our camping ground.
That was when there was escaped prisoners around, and they thought they were in your truck.
Yeah, we'd sabotage
protecting your interests.
Yeah. What did you do on that night?
Well, I think I set fire to the paddock with some acetone.
Michael decided we're having a camping, we're just quietly camping, and in his logic he decided he'd get the methanol, which he thought was water, and he'd walk right round our camping site, being typical Sinclair, knows everything. And at the end he gets to the fire and just goes into it in a hole. Oh, I didn't mean to!
Mike has a clear problem with clear liquids because he rebuilt the Checo Porsche, which was the old car that I'd left behind in the UK, me and George had left behind, and we'd done the head gasket or whatever on it, and Mike was going to fix it up at Hobbs Barracks where they were based, and the 20-litre containers contained distilled water and the other product, acetone. Mike does the head gasket, fills the car up with the clear liquid, comes back and it's bubbling its head off. He put the acetone, put 20 litres of acetone in.
Listen, I think tight enough yak. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along. Particularly thanks to Dave and Sue for the evening. Fantastic. To be honest, without one of the guys that's been very influential in getting all our kit here, has been working his backside off for I don't know how many months. Tane, mate, absolutely fantastic. We shipped all our gear to Tane's. It's all his gear here. Fuel drums, everything from funnels to beakers to you name it. Tane, thank you very much, mate. Really appreciate it. So unless we've got any other questions to the floor, fantastic, thank you very much for coming along. Well done, Mike. Great, buddy. Hang on. How unusual, Magee wants to say something.
I'm just worried that Sinclair's going to keep windsurfing and try to emigrate to Australia by windsurfing. That's my only worry.
So thank you very much, Mike, and listen, we please buy a book. You might have to go through Mike's press agent nowadays to have a chat to him, but well done, Mike.
I bought 3.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and thanks, Michael.
Buddy.